A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. Glad you're with me on the program today. We're going to be talking in a couple of minutes with Kerrie Ann Auclair from Gun Owners Action League. She's got a new piece out called The Price of Disarmament, Why Women Deserve the Right to Defend Themselves Anywhere. And, you know, I can't say that this piece was eye-opening necessarily. I mean, I'm a husband, I'm a dad. I know, at least somewhat, what women have to deal with in this world on occasion. But, you know, on the other hand, this kind of was an eye-opening column from Kerrie Ann Auclair because she described some recent incidents involving some Second Amendment advocates. And really, it does speak to why the right to carry is so critically important. Why things like gun-free zones and these, you know, BS sensitive places that are sensitive in name only put people at risk. And I would say that while it puts everybody at risk, yes, women, I think, are more likely to suffer irreparable harms because of these policies. So, again, it was a very powerful column from Kerrie Ann Auclair, and I wanted to reach out to her and see if she'd come on the program. She was very gracious, and I accepted. So without any further ado, let's kick off the conversation with Kerrie Ann Auclair from Gun Owners Action League up in Massachusetts. Take a look and listen. Kerrie Ann, thanks so much for coming on the program. It's really good to see you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, big fans of Goal here at Cam and Company. And I got to say that I think Jim Wallace is a big fan of yours because he is touted what you're doing. You are the advocacy director for the Gun Owners Action League, as well as the Women's Programs Assistant. You're also with DC Project, right? And Armed Women of America.
Yep.
And, you know, I got to say, and I said this in our introduction, your column, in one sense, it wasn't exactly eye-opening to me because as a husband and as a father, I know at least some of what women have to deal with on a fairly regular basis. But in another way, this really was eye-opening because the experiences that you described so recently, right, during the recent fly into D.C. from a Women for Gun Rights, I mean, I got to say, Kerrie Ann, like this was really disturbing stuff that you're writing about.
It was, and I didn't expect, and again, I was in a boot to boot. I was in a boot. So, you know, to have that happen and see that happening and having to witness that was scary because the only thing that I had to defend myself was my voice, screaming and yelling and trying to get the attention from the other ladies walking in. So that was scary.
Yeah. And so, you know, your experience a couple of years ago, you were there in D.C. for a Women for Gun Rights rally in front of the Supreme Court. And as you said in your column, there was a homeless guy who was kind of hovering around you, right? Mm-hmm. And at first, you didn't really think much about it. But when you started to split up and go back to your hotels, this guy started following one of the groups of women. What happened next?
So what happened was when we all split, we probably split into about 5 different groups. And I was about to cross the street with my group. And then I noticed that homeless guy was tailing behind one group of ladies. They didn't see him and they didn't realize that when they opened the door and they went in, he kind of almost, I don't want to say ran, but he walked very quickly in behind them and no one knew. So I immediately ran across the street with a boot, hobbling with my cane, opened the door and screamed, "Hey, ladies," just to get them to turn around because I didn't see what was in his hands. I couldn't see if there was something in his hands. I don't know what his intentions were. I have no idea. But all I know is when they turned around, I pointed and they immediately knew. And they all kind of went sideways a bit and then kind of went around him. We all kind of got together. And security was called right away. So, but the scary part is when we all went back upstairs to our room, I looked outside and I saw him still hanging by the door. by the tree. He was standing there for hours, just standing by the tree. So I immediately called Kelly Pigeon, took a picture of him, sent it to her phone. I said, he didn't leave. He's still here. So a big alert went out to all the ladies, don't leave the hotel. Security is getting called. Cops are getting called, and it was a little scary. That was scary. That was a scary trip because we had a lot of things going on. We had protests going on. And it was a little nerve-wracking. That was probably the scariest trip I've ever been on. And, immediately once all that went down, then the next day, all the protests went down. Kelly said, it's time to go. Everybody's got to go. Get to the airport and just get out of Dodge. So,
Yeah.
but you really don't have anything. I had no pepper spray. I had no knife. I had no firearm. So you're kind of like, you're defenseless. You're just defenseless. And me traveling more and more, I just went to Philly. I'm on the board for the Second Amendment Institute as well. And it's just scary. You're taking Uber rides by yourself now. Now that I'm traveling more, I'm not with the group of ladies. Because when you go to DC, you're with the group of ladies. So, you kind of feel like you're watching each other's back. You have each other's back. You're not defenseless, so to speak, because you have a group of ladies. But when you start traveling more by yourself and you're taking Ubers by yourself, it's scary, and
yeah.
I don't have anything. I have nothing to defend myself.
Well, and I mean, again, this gets to the policies, right? So DC, you can theoretically get a non-resident carry permit, but as a non-resident, particularly, look, it's one thing if you live in Virginia and Maryland, you can probably find the classes, fairly easily. But in Massachusetts, I don't know if there's a firearms instructor who's teaching the DC class, right? And then you've got to send in your application. DC doesn't make it easy for non-residents to carry. And then if you do get your permit, again, it's Washington, DC, right? There are so many sensitive places where lawful carry is off limits. And if you all are doing, a fly-in, you're going to be down around the Capitol. Well, that's a gun-free zone for everybody but members of Congress and law enforcement, right? All right. So Kerrie Ann is back with us. And we should say that you're dealing with some winter weather up there in Massachusetts, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, again, I appreciate you getting back on. And I probably did freeze up here, so I'm not sure the last thing you heard me talk about. But in essence, all I was saying is that even if theoretically you're visiting places where you are allowed to carry, in reality, there are so many gun-free zones, whether it's, all of the gun-free zones that are in Washington, D.C. You talked about taking Uber, right? Uber's got a policy that says drivers and passengers should both be disarmed. So what do you do if you're in Philadelphia? Even if you've got a carry license that's recognized in Pennsylvania,
right?
As a visitor, your options are going to be limited if you want to follow the law. And this gets, I think, to the heart of your column about the price of disarmament, right? And and look, in many cases, these are intended consequences, right? We don't want people carrying guns, so we're going to put these policies in place. But I have to think, Kerrie Ann, that a lot of people who may instinctually support these type of laws aren't thinking about the experiences that you've gone through, the experience that you described from Candy, who was a Women for Gun Rights member who was accosted and assaulted in her hotel.
I mean,
recently.
Unbelievable. Yeah. So scary.
It's so easy to not think about this, right? And to have that sort of attitude of, well, as long as we have the gun-free zone, everything is going to be okay because there won't be any guns around.
Right. And it just makes us targets. So when we're in a gun-free zone, we're targets. And I don't think people realize that, especially with women. I mean, I've had, that experience in DC. I had an experience one time going back to the Boston Common when I was at the State House. I got a little nervous with something that was happening, and I had pepper spray in my hand, thank God. But, and you can't carry that everywhere. And then recently I went to California and had pepper spray, and someone told me, oh, you might not be able to carry that kind of pepper spray. So I'm like, are you kidding me? So it's just, I wish people would realize that when they put these gun laws into place, no matter what state you're in, it's making us targets. And I'm not a very big person. I'm small. And even if I was, it's still my right to protect myself and my family. And when you take that right away from me, it makes me mad. It makes me mad because that's not right. Because I want to come home to my family. I want to be able to come home and talk about the amazing things that we've done to protect our Second Amendment. So, and again, going to the state house, you're disarmed. I have to declare, I thankfully can declare my pepper spray, and I carry a knife, and they laugh. Sometimes I have more than one pepper spray. Oops, sorry. But, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
It is. I mean, and look, and obviously it's a shame. I will tell you, this was a real eye-opening experience. My youngest daughter worked at Walmart for a few months last year as a greeter. And every day, and I mean every day, Kerrie Ann, she would come home with stories of, the creepy dudes who wouldn't leave her alone. And, she's not old enough to lawfully carry in Virginia. And again, she could not have carried at work. But this was something, we immediately started talking about, okay, what are some non-lethal options for you? Because even if there are, people in the bright lights and there are cameras and they're watching, when you walk out to your car at night, one of those creepy guys might be there. And I want you to be able to protect yourself. So, we've had that conversation. And that's why I said in some ways what you wrote about wasn't exactly eye-opening to me, but it was a very, very poignant reminder of, again, why the right to keep and bear arms is so important. I get so frustrated when I hear people, oh, you gun nuts, you care about your guns more than your children. No.
Oh, I hate
my
that.
guns are inanimate objects. My guns are tools. I don't love my guns. I love my family.
Right.
I love myself. Right. And frankly, I love humanity. I try to, even see strangers, with a positive outlook until I'm proven wrong.
Right.
I believe so deeply that just as you said, you've got the right to defend yourself. You've got the right to feel safe and to be safe and secure. Right. It's not about loving guns more than people. It's about loving people enough to protect them.
Right. And when you put a firearm on a woman's hip, it creates an equalizer. And I think people look at me like I'm crazy when they hear that, until they actually, become a firearm owner and understand what responsible firearm ownership is. And when I train my students, and most of them are women, and I say that and make that statement, it resonates with them, because they're like, oh, I never even thought of that. And, it's just so frustrating, and it really upsets me, especially as a trainer, trying to train these women to be safe, comfortable and confident with their firearms, and then telling them, oh, but there's gun-free zones. Oh, by the way.
Right. Yeah. And listen, I mean, and I'm sure it's even worse living in Massachusetts than, and living in a state that actually does a decent job of recognizing your Second Amendment rights. In Massachusetts, they're actively trying to destroy them. Right.
Yep. Exactly.
Well,
and that's why we have to fight.
Absolutely. And I got to say, I mean, your testimony before the state legislature last year was incredible. And it was fantastic. And I am so glad that we have your voice there in Massachusetts. I wish that we could compel lawmakers to actually listen to what you have to say, but I am so glad that you're there and that you were speaking out. And I got to ask, I mean, from a instructor's perspective, what are you seeing there on the ground over the past couple of months? I would imagine that with the passage of Chapter 135 and all of the confusion and chaos around it, that there might have been an uptick in interest in people wanting to exercise their rights.
Yep, because unfortunately, with the training requirements, anybody that got their firearms after August 2nd, they are going to have to follow, when they do a renewal of their firearms for their license, they would have to follow all the new protocols. I'm grandfathered. Anybody before August 2nd's grandfathered. But yes, absolutely. There was a lot of people that actually reached out to me in my classes. I had full classes. People just wanted to get their license. So, 600,000 gun owners, I know for a fact it's definitely more than that, because we've been preaching that for almost 2 years. We have 600,000 gun owners. We have a lot more now for sure. And more women are starting to get their firearms, because the world has changed. I mean, let's face it. We hear the news, and we understand the importance of protecting ourselves no matter where we are. So it's been an honor to be able to provide that education to more women, and seeing them getting their license has been very humble. We need more people and more women to get there. It's changing, right? Fastest growing demographics.
Yep. And that's a good thing. And I hope that it continues. And again, you were a big part of that. Women for Gun Rights is a big part of that. So thank you for your activism. Thank you for your involvement and your engagement. And again, thanks for your time today during a New England snowstorm. I really appreciate you sticking with us, and I look forward to having you back again very, very soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a good weekend.
You too.
My thanks to Kerrie Ann for joining us on the program, and looking forward to having her back again very soon. Again, a great advocate, not only for gun owners in Massachusetts, but around the country as well. All right, let's turn our attention now to today's Armed Citizen story, our good deed of the day, and our recidivist report. We will start there with a case out of California. My News LA reporting, crime spree convict charged with attempted robbery in Anaheim. As it turns out, this crime spree convict was recently released from prison after a 3-year sentence for a crime spree in Tustin, California. Sean Anthony Aguilera, charged on Tuesday this week with one felony count of attempted robbery. He's accused of trying to steal a cell phone outside of a liquor store last Friday. The victim fought back and was able to get the phone back. According to My News LA, Aguilera was sentenced in June of last year, June 28th specifically, of 2024, to 3 years in prison. Yeah. So we're talking about, 8 months later? After he was sentenced to 3 years in prison, Aguilera charged once again. But the reason for this is because at the time of his sentencing, he already had 2 years of custody credits. He had been convicted on June the 3rd of 2024 of attempted robbery and assault with force likely to produce great bodily injury, both felonies, as well as single misdemeanor counts of battery and groping. Now, the prosecutor in this case had argued for a prison sentence of 4 years, 8 months, saying that Aguilera targeted 3 separate unrelated women on October 21st, 2022. And the prosecutor went on to say in a letter to one of the victims and his comments to probation officials, Aguilera, quote, failed to acknowledge the level of physical and psychological harm inflicted on his victims. But, again, the judge disregarded the prosecutor's request, sentencing Aguilera to 3 years instead, and with credit, again, for time served while awaiting trial. He was basically allowed to go free just a few months later. So I think at this point, it's a fair argument to make that the prosecutor was right in wanting to hold Aguilera to a higher prison sentence than what he ultimately received. Again, I'm going to tell you, though, I mean, attempted robbery, assault with force likely to produce great bodily injury. And then he was convicted, I guess, on misdemeanor counts of battery and groping. I don't know if there were original charges that were more serious than that. But, I mean, if you're attacking 3 women randomly over the course of a single day, frankly, I wouldn't have a problem with a 10-year prison sentence for that. So 3 years? Yeah, that seems like a slap on the wrist to me. All right, today's Armed Citizen story from San Antonio, Texas, where police say a barbershop owner shot and killed an armed robber in self-defense. San Antonio, I got to say, we've had our fair share of self-defense stories from San Antonio over the past few months. This particular defensive gun use happening Wednesday night around 7:30 in the evening. Police say a man entered a barbershop on the city's north side while it was still open and basically tried to rob everybody inside, started demanding wallets and purses, displayed a firearm. According to the San Antonio police, one of the business owners, described as a 26-year-old man, did not comply quickly enough with the robber's demands and ended up being pistol whipped. The suspect then focused his attention, KSAT says, on the other business owner, a 51-year-old woman, and pulled out zip ties. So as the armed robber is trying to now zip tie the woman, the male business owner, who had just been pistol whipped, grabbed his own gun and shot the suspect multiple times in the chest. The Bexar County Medical Examiner says that the attempted robber was initially hospitalized with life-threatening injuries, passed away apparently at the hospital. And as KSAT reports, police say the male business owner had the right to use lethal force and is not expected to face charges. Now, I mean, at that point, yeah, your life is pretty clearly in danger, right? You've already been attacked. You know that the robber has a gun. You know he's capable of physical violence. And now he's looking to restrain everybody inside that barbershop. It doesn't get much more clear-cut than that. So kudos to that barbershop owner there in San Antonio, Texas, for being able to protect and defend not only himself, but the others there in that barbershop as well. And finally today, our good deed of the day, in the right place at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing, a caregiver in Erie, Pennsylvania, who saved the life of a stranger on his way to work just the other day. There is the hero in question. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. Keanu Olivo, Keanw. I've never run across that name before, and I really hope that I'm getting that name correct. Anyway, he works as a caregiver with Moravia Health Network, and he was on his way to a client's home on Sunday morning. He said he was taking a route he doesn't normally take, and he saw a guy on the side of the street. He said he tried to flag me down asking for a favor. He said, I thought it was something regular, like he used the bathroom on himself and needed some help. He said, but I got over there and I saw a puddle of deep red blood. So Olivo quickly called police, but he also decided, you know what, I need to help this guy out myself. He said there was a deep hand laceration. So I figured to stop the bleed as much as I could. I took my jacket off. I used both sleeves as tourniquets as tight as possible. He was still bleeding a lot, he says, so I took my shirt off and I used that as pressure for his hand. Now, keep in mind, it's January in Erie, Pennsylvania. It's not exactly, 80 degrees and sunny, right? It was a pretty cold winter day. Olivo stripped down in order to help this guy stop the bleeding. He said that he noticed a trail of blood along the sidewalk leading up to a neighbor's house from the guy who was looking for help. And he said he just happened to be in the right place at the right time. He said he could have just died over there. And he said, that's the worst. Anybody could feel horrible seeing an old man on their porch just passing out, dying out, bleeding out. He says, that's not cool. So you do what you can to help. He stayed with the gentleman for about 15 minutes or so until an ambulance arrived at the scene. Darcy Cruz, who is the client that Olivo was on his way to see on Sunday morning, described him as a great and caring person. He said he obviously didn't think twice about what needed to be done. So apparently if I need help, I apparently don't have to worry about that. I'm in good hands. Yeah. Since that initial report, by the way, there has been an update. And Olivo did reach out to the gentleman who he helped on Sunday. It looks like he's going to be okay, which is even better news. So again, in the right place at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing in Erie, Pennsylvania. Keanu Olivo. Again, I really hope I'm pronouncing your name correct, Mr. Olivo, because you certainly deserve that at the very least for your very, very good deed. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of Bearing Arms Cam and Company. I want to thank you for being a part of the program as always. I'm looking forward to seeing you back here again. Now, I will say there's a slight chance that I'll be off on Monday. Just to be perfectly honest with you, I'm having some struggles over the past couple of weeks, dealing with my grief. So I'm going to talk to somebody. I have not found a time to do that. But when I do, I figure I'm probably not going to feel like coming back and doing a show or doing a bunch of typing. So one day next week, I anticipate I'll be taking off to deal with my mental health. Again, listen, I don't want you to worry. Not a danger to myself or others. But, do need to talk it out. And as much as I love my friends and my family, I don't want to burden them with what's going on inside my head and my heart. So I want to talk to a professional. And again, I don't want people to be stigmatized by that. So I want to let you know what's going on. Anyway, have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you back here on Monday, hopefully. If not then, Tuesday. And until then, be well, Just talked right over the end of the music. Be well, be safe, and be free.